Altadena.org. The Cochran Firm and Ivy McNeil, Wyatt, Purcell and Diggs, Jazz Mechanic, and others have launched a GoFundMe specifically targeting Altadena. Visit LA Fires. The impacted Black community urgently needs help on GoFundMe, and donate to help Black evacuees fighting for survival. Airbnb is offering free temporary housing to people displaced by the fires. Call 211 to sign up. The LA Chamber of Commerce is stepping up to help you sort out insurance claims and other paperwork. Reach them at 213-580-7500. South LA Cafe has free groceries, clothing, and water available at 1700 Browning Boulevard in LA. Track their giveaways or volunteer through their Instagram at South LA Cafe. U-Haul is donating short-term storage free of charge for 30 days to evacuees. Shelter for small or large animals can be accessed by calling 211. A Black-led coalition of community organizations is offering support and resources in the Altadena area at the Flint Ridge Center at 236 West Mountain Street in Pasadena. For comprehensive lists of resources for housing, food, shelter, and more, visit Mutual Aid LA Network on Instagram. Praying for LA and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
Several other states, including California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Tennessee, and Washington. The Attorney General Mecklenburg areas. Real page, which is accused of tapping.
Or Black News First. The views expressed on our programs are not necessarily. WVON Bowie.
Part of the family, not just your family. The pardon power is not placed in the Constitution just for the president's personal family and friends program. So I've been asked by reporters, Jesse, you did not receive a pardon today. What do you think? I said, of course I'm disappointed. Democrats had an opportunity to end felonization for thousands, if not millions of American citizens who've completed their time and the sentence that they served. The fight for the American felon, of which I am one, must continue. Americans have been provided forgiveness as a gift in the Constitution, in the function and character of the office of the presidency itself. The process must not be reserved or privileged. We are left with the only option, and that is to continue our appeal to the 47th President of the United States, Donald John Trump. President Biden issued pardons for his entire family and left the remainder of the American families in felonization. If President Trump feels his pardon pin for the debt-paid felon, as it is expected he will do for the January 6th insurrectionists, I believe he will make inroads into the base of the Democratic Party on a scale that we have not seen. The power to grant grace and new life to the American people, 70+ million debt-paid and unpardoned offenders, is the most powerful power in the Constitution, and only the President of the United States can do it. The power of grace and mercy is inherent in the office, irrespective of the party who holds the office. And so while Joe Biden may not have forgiven American people, our bus drivers, our cab drivers, others, our sisters, our family members we know are in prison, men and women who paid their debt to society and served, we will be making an appeal to President Donald Trump, who not only has 34 felonies himself, but has been through the criminal justice system himself. And let us hope that he is sensitized to the ramifications and the consequences, not just for his family, not just for my family, but for millions of families whom he has the power to lift the burden of shame, blame, and guilt off of their lives and bring them back into our system of justice and fairness. Our greatest challenge in this hour is to recognize there are some things that we are going to disagree with Donald Trump on, probably many, but there are some areas we're going to have to work together. Why together? Because for every man and woman who is not forgiven for something they've done in their past, 4 more years is tacked on their lives, a sentence that was not given to them by a judge, but given to them by a political process, where people try to determine whether or not one person is deserving over and against other persons, when none of the 70 million Americans who have paid their debt to society have the same offense. Let me say that again. No one's act pattern is the same. What we have in common is we paid our debt to society in full. And by paying our debt to society in full, it doesn't matter what the facts are. We don't have to relitigate every person's case. At the end of the criminal justice process ought to be forgiveness for every American. Now, I'm going to stick with that. That's going to be my ministry, and I'm going to find ways to apply it to more than just forgiveness for people's lives. I believe that the very culture of the government itself must look out for the least of these, for the woman by the well, for the prostitute, for the thieves and the murderers on the cross. When we come forward, we will continue this conversation on the Jesse Jackson Jr.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk. For the latest updates, resources, and ways to help your neighbors in need, stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580. Together, we'll rebuild. Together, we'll recover. Together, we are Los Angeles strong. KBLA Talk 1580. Your voice, your community, your station.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has a program specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm, A-rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their award-winning team of tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to end your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other IRS actions. Make sure you're getting the best options to resolve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima today for a free confidential consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Move.
First things first with Dominique DePrima at 6 a.m. Tavis Smiley at 9 a.m. Truth Time with Dr. Cornell West and Nina Turner at 12 noon. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show at 1 p.m. The D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show at 2 p.m. A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Quarterly Quartet at 4 p.m. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
Tune in weekdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the talk of the town. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Code that moved with honored and privileged to have this opportunity to syndicate with you. Tavis? Tavis, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me, sir?
Tavis, thank you very much for joining us. Tavis, let me ask you, what does this day mean in terms of symbolism? What does it mean in terms of the significance of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and the inauguration of Donald Trump?
Let me start. I'll be happy to answer that question. Let me start by saying congratulations to you. I know what it means in my career to be on the first day of syndication. And so for the audience here in Los Angeles, we've had a couple of technical issues. Let me apologize to them. But what you're experiencing is the first day of syndication for Jesse Jackson Jr. We are honored to have him on our station here in LA every day at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It is the case, though, that starting today, he's also heard in his hometown of Chicago on WVON, the voice of the Negro, my favorite black talk station. So every day, Jesse Jackson Jr. is now heard in both Chicago and LA. And that's nothing to turn your nose up at, because that means Jesse Jackson Jr. is now heard in two of the top 3 markets in the country. You have New York, LA, and Chicago. And so to start syndication, being on in 2 of the top 3 markets is a big deal. Many of us start at the bottom and work our way up. Jesse Jackson starts at the top, being heard in LA and Chicago. So I want to just start by congratulating you on this first day of syndication. I'm happy to be with you, my friend.
Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome. To answer your question, it's a strange day. Strange because obviously we're celebrating the legacy and the life and the work and witness of the person I regard, this is just me, as the greatest American this country's ever produced. Trying to celebrate, again, his life and legacy, his work and witness, juxtaposed against the onset of Trump 2.0 is a strange thing, to be sure. But what it says to me more than anything else is that in this moment, we have to hold him, Donald J. Trump, accountable. And that's going to be hard work. The good news is, as Black folk, we have been here before. We have endured far worse. And so I'm not an optimist, but I am, Jesse, an eternal prisoner of hope. I always make this distinction, given that optimism and hope, as you know, are not the same thing. Optimism suggests there is a particular set of facts, circumstances, conditions, something you can see, feel, or touch that gives you reason to believe that things are going to get better. This is not a moment of optimism. But the Bible that I read and the Bible that you read says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so, in a moment like this, I hold on to hope that we will do our part to hold them accountable, even if there's no reason right now to be optimistic about the next 4 years.
I'm deeply concerned that the country is deeply divided, that African Americans are also in a transition from Joe Biden, whom so many celebrated, but now this idea that we find ourselves literally in just a few short hours that began at noon today in a new kind of resistance. What is the role of Black radio and truth telling in the present era?
Great question. I've said many times, and I say again, and it's now more, I guess, more relevant, more prescient than ever before. And that is that there are some questions that don't get asked if Black media doesn't ask them. There's some issues that don't get raised if we don't raise them. Some topics that don't get traversed if we don't traverse them. And frankly, a lot of folk doing some great work who don't get profiled if we do not profile them. And so I have never been comfortable. I don't discuss this a lot publicly, but I've never been comfortable people calling me a journalist. I have nothing but respect for true and real hardworking journalists, but I am not a journalist. If you're going to call me anything, call me an advocacy journalist. But I stand in the tradition of Ida B. Wells Barnett, of Du Bois, of Monroe Trotter. I stand in that tradition of using the platforms that I've been blessed to have access to in the media to raise these tough questions. Indeed, to hold folk accountable. As you will recall, I caught a lot of hell during the Obama era for trying to do what I'd always done, which is to hold people accountable. Bill Clinton is a personal friend of mine, and yet it didn't stop me from holding him accountable, at least doing my part, to hold him accountable when I was on Tom Joyner and on BET every night around his signing of that welfare, I called it a welfare deform bill, not a welfare reform bill. His signing of the crime bill, where you had to get caught with 100 times more powder than crack cocaine. I went in on Bill Clinton about that. There were any number of issues. He didn't move fast enough to get into Rwanda to save those lives when the Hutus and the Tutsis were going at it. So there are any number of things that Bill Clinton did that I had issue with, and I so said on the media platforms I was blessed to have. Fast forward to the Obama era, and for many reasons, I get it, I ain't stuck on stupid, folk didn't want him to be held accountable in that particular moment. And I made very clear that my critique of him is not the same as Sean Hannity's or Bill O'Reilly's critique of him, but I believe there's honor in accountability. We have to be willing to hold all leaders accountable. And for me, that included Joe Biden as well. And so here we are in this moment where we're going to do our part again to hold him accountable. That is to say, President Trump. And the Black media is going to be more necessary and more relevant in that fight, Jesse, than ever before.
I believe that. And I want for our listeners to understand that this isn't just journalism. This is advocacy journalism. We are being called to show some leadership in these roles when we have these microphones. And I just don't think there's anyone who's ever done that better than you. I remember here in Chicago, for example, Lou Palmer and in my very young age, Wesley South here at WVON. And you know the others, including Sister Barnett, you mentioned, who was an advocate at the turn of the century, Ida B. Wells, advocating against lynching and against the peculiar institution of Jim Crow as it related to Black people. But there is a difference than asking a question and holding both Black and white political leaders and representatives accountable. Hang around that for another second for us, Tavis.
No, I think there's a different call to service in this regard. And so I believe that, again, we have to go into these areas and these spaces where they're not going to go. I was just trying to find the right word, Jesse. It's more than chagrined. It's more than disappointed. It's more than angst. But when I heard that Reverend today, Lorenzo Sewells, I think his name is, who stood to the podium today and didn't just quote Dr. King, but indeed bastardized Dr. King's words. You and I both know that the right, whenever they want to invoke King, go to that one line. They act as if Dr. King only gave one speech in his whole life. And in that speech, they only know that one line that they use all the time, that I want my children to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And they use that to make these suggestions that King would be against programs like affirmative action, now wiped out by this U.S. Supreme Court, and other corrective policies. That is not what King meant when he uttered that line. But to see a man of the cloth, an African-American clergy, stand up and twist King's words in that way, that Negro's got to be called on that.
Absolutely.
It wasn't
you know
just
what?
that he twisted his words. Then he stands there and tries to channel King, tries to emulate King on the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. I mean, Negro, you are not Dr. King. Let it go. But you knew that somebody was going to be selected, somebody black was going to be selected to stand up and to twist again King's words on this very important day, honoring him. And that's the kind of stuff that we have to be about the business of, making sure that we correct the public record and that we keep them on point and not allow them to push a political agenda that's antithetical to our best interest. If the black media doesn't lead in that regard, if the black media doesn't lead in that fight, we're in trouble. Why do I say we're in trouble? Because you've already seen the ways in which the mainstream media is running for the hills. They're running already. You saw that frame today. The frame, the photo frame, the camera frame of Donald Trump seated right here. And who'd you see right behind him? Elon Musk. Who's next to him? Jeff Bezos. One controls X, one controls the Washington Post, and there were others there. It's abundantly clear here in LA, the LA Times, our owner of the LA Times, Patrick Sheen-Shong, the mainstream media is already turning its back. You saw Meta the other day saying that we're no longer doing fact checking. The mainstream media has checked out. When Trump first came to power, there was, Jesse, as you recall, a certain kind of defiance. That defiance has now turned to deference. And if we in the black media don't lead this fight to make sure that he's held accountable, then I shudder for this democracy.
I just want to remind everyone that Dr. King, in that same speech before he got to little black boys and white girls and black boys all holding hands, he said 100 years later, speaking about 1863, we stand in the shadow of a man who set us free. But 100 years later, we still find ourselves on the South Side. We find ourselves in Crenshaw. We find ourselves in some of the communities that just burnt down in Los Angeles. We find ourselves on the west side of Chicago. 100 years later, the Negro is still trapped, Dr. King says, in these communities of isolation, without jobs, without economic development, without growth. And then he goes on to say his fundamental point in the speech: America has issued us a bad check. It has come back marked insufficient funds, and we refuse to believe that a government that just came up with money for COVID, that a government that just came up with money for Israel, that a government that just came up with money for Ukraine, that a government that just came up with money whenever it wants to come up with money, it can't come up with money to pay and make good on the commitment to the equality and the freedom of the Negro. That was the speech, and that's what it was about. And it ended on, but I have a dream that one day all these wonderful things can happen. In the meantime, he's going to offer a big tax break, take the money and give it to folk who don't need it, make Elon Musk even richer than he already is, Jeff Bezos, Vivek Ramaswamy, and the tech giants. I mean, I want to make sure, Tavis, as I begin this show, and in my next hour, the owner of WVON, Melody Span Cooper, will be my guest. I'm going to ask her questions also of what are the expectations that you have for me and for us as advocacy journalists in holding Donald Trump and this administration accountable. And listen to me, let me make one other point. The last time we experienced this kind of authoritarian leadership was Jim Crow. Holding Negroes accountable in this era matters. Because some of them shucking and jiving tonight. Some of them hanging out with Donald Trump. Some of them be partying with Donald Trump. Some of them trying to find a way to get close to Donald Trump. We have to approach Donald Trump with a certain amount of integrity and transparency so that our own people don't even run us out our community. What you doing meeting with Trump in Mar-a-Lago? I only want to talk with them about one thing. I had a doctor on our program the other day. I know we'll be coming forward shortly, but I had a doctor on our program the other day, a cardiologist out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Over the course of his career, he sent 200 people to home care. Maybe 3 people, he said. 3 people showed up in his case when they said he violated the Medicare reimbursement system. He caught a felony. He's 58 years old. He can never practice in a hospital or in a private clinic or in a public hospital again, a cardiologist. And then he hit me upside the head with these facts. There are 70,000 people, nurses, anesthesiologists, doctors, the best educated people in the Black community. All of them caught a very small case. Not malpractice. They didn't cut somebody's leg off and add it to somebody else's body. Nothing malpractice. They caught a paper crime. He said, Congressman, I have never planned in my life to be a crook. I went to medical school. I've worked my whole life to be a scientist, and now I can't practice medicine. He said, we need someone to take the 70,000 people that are represented by us and our condition to Donald Trump or to the Democrats and say, the only way we can ever practice medicine again in the Black community is if Donald Trump pardons us. And what does Joe Biden, the Democrat, do right before he leaves office? In case those of you who are listening in Chicago have not heard the news, Joe Biden several months ago pardoned Hunter. Today, in his last act of commutation and pardon, he pardoned every member of his family. Now, how about that? So this thing cuts across whether or not your family gets the pardon. Don't worry about Jesse Jr. This ain't about me. Whether or not your family, which has not hired a lawyer in Washington, D.C. to get a pardon, or whether or not anyone else's family who is entitled to the forgiveness of the Constitution, it's available to them. So when Tavis Smiley and Melody Span Cooper talk about advocacy journalism, we are not only bringing it from the perspective of our own experiences, we're also articulating a condition that exists. For even here on the south side of Chicago, Jackson Park Hospital and Roseland Hospital and Stroger Hospital, these doctors need to be brought back into the system so they can provide critical incidences of care for Black people. I know that's possible, but we're going to need the airwaves and we're going to need to be on the same page at the same time. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, we'll be with Tavis Smiley.
It's Afternoon Drive Time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. For the third time, a presidential inauguration coincides with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, previously in 1997 and 2013. Across the U.S., MLK events continue, including Atlanta's beloved community center at Ebenezer Baptist Church, featuring keynote speaker Bishop William J. Barber II. President Trump is withdrawing the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement again. First signed in 2015, the deal unites nearly 200 countries to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is announcing limited re-entry for wildfire evacuees. Residents can check re-entry info at lacity.gov and must show photo ID at checkpoints. And the Brooklyn Academy of Music is hosting its annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day tribute. Black Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul will be among the speakers at today's event aimed at honoring the civil rights leader. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Shop limited time deals during Lowe's Pro Savings Days. Get a free adjustable stand when you buy a DeWalt 12-inch miter saw. That's a $229 value. Valid 1/13 through 1/24 while supplies last.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
After the Lakers lost to the Clippers Sunday night, LeBron appeared to throw some criticism at Lakers management. LeBron said, and I quote, "The way our team is constructed, we have to play close to perfect basketball to win," end quote. The key element in LeBron's quote is the way our team is constructed, which means LeBron does not feel he and Anthony Davis have all the players they need to contend for the NBA championship. The Lakers are 2-4 in their last 6 games. They are 6th in the Western Conference, but only a game and a half ahead of 10th place Phoenix. Kawhi Leonard will not play in the Clippers home game tonight against Chicago. Leonard has been advised to sit out back-to-back games to rest his right knee. He had 19 points in 24 minutes last night against the Lakers. In his last 2 games, the improving Leonard is averaging 21 points and shooting 70%. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I feel so alone. I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like stress.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
Time is up. The IRS is in full collection mode for 2024, issuing liens, levies, and garnishments to anyone who has a past tax debt or unfiled tax returns. Don't wait till it's too late. Your paycheck and bank accounts are at risk of being seized. Call now and stop the collection process today. If you're living check to check, no matter how much you're making, you still may qualify for the Fresh Start programs offered by the IRS to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. It's just a 5-minute call to get your options, and it's free. If you owe back taxes, have years of unfiled tax returns, under audit, have a wage or bank levy, or finally just want to sleep better, business or personal, call the experts at Republic Tax Relief while there's still time. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and tough. This veteran-owned company has the fight you need to take on the IRS. Don't go at it alone. The call is free. Call their hotline number now, 800-652-1714. That's 800-652-1714. Find out if you qualify today. Call 800-652-1714 or go to republictaxrelief.com.
Want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is going to be running and have under his control in his new government Department of Government Efficiency does matter to our community's dialogue. Where are they getting the money to pay for this stuff? Well, some of it can come from Elon Musk, but where's other money come for the cutting programs in our own communities that we need tax dollars to help fund? And we may be looking at the biggest grift in the history of the United States with the billionaires that are around Elon Musk. My very special guest is Tavis Smiley. He is a multi-award winning advocacy journalist. Tavis, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, sir.
Tavis, another question for you. This threat against the backdrop of Dr. King's legacy is is very serious and it's very real. Journalists are being threatened. I've encouraged people to download the WVON app, to download the KBLA app, because we have to fund independent journalism in order to be able to speak truth to power, or we simply won't be able to tune in by our phones, by our tablets, by our laptops to what the truth really, really is. How difficult is this going to be in this era?
You know, I'm afraid, Jesse, that we are living in an era where, how might I put this, the truth is what each of us determines it to be. There seems to be no objective truth these days. It's whatever people believe to be true for themselves. You'll recall in the first Trump administration, they advanced this notion of alternative facts. Remember that there are certain alternative facts. We call those lies in my neighborhood, but there is no objective definition these days of the truth. That concerns me, number one. We saw that in Trump 1.0. We're going to see that on steroids, I believe, in Trump 2.0, number one. But number two, what is of far greater concern to me is the ways in which we're going to see Donald Trump not just push back, but punish those persons, those entities, those outlets that are attempting to tell the truth. I was so disappointed weeks ago, as you recall, when ABC News, to my mind, frankly, just caved. They just caved and paid Donald Trump that $16 million in the case that Trump brought against George Stephanopoulos. And so ABC News, I think, caved far too quickly. It's very, very difficult to prove that kind of character assassination, the way our laws are written. And ABC, I think, could have and should have fought that much longer. Libel is it's a very high, you're the lawyer, not me. Libel is a very high standard in this country. And I just thought that ABC News caved too quickly. And then what happened the next day? He went after a paper in Iowa. And so the Trump administration, I don't think is going to stop trying to punish media outlets for attempting to get at the truth when they are offering assessments of him that he doesn't like. And so to what extent is VON on that list? To what extent is KBLA on that list? This is the era that we live in. And you know how this works. In any sort of fight, any sort of tete-a-tete, the truth is always the first casualty. And so what you want to do is to shut down the media, shut down those truth tellers who are using their platforms to try to get the truth out. I believe that the suffering gets rendered invisible if nobody tells the truth. The suffering gets rendered invisible if nobody tells the truth. And so your job and my job, and those of us who care about those who are disenfranchised politically, culturally, economically, somebody has to be their voice. Somebody has to tell that truth. The question is, what price will we pay for trying to tell that truth in Trump 2.0? And the jury's out on that question, Jesse.
Well, I'm equally as concerned, but I do know that we need to pay our own pipers. And so I'm encouraging the advertisement on KBLA and the advertisement locally on WVON and nationally as we bring in the resources to support the voices that are willing to tell the truth. So we don't have to go to Amazon. We don't have to go to Tesla. We don't have to go to these guys and then end up singing a song that is not familiar to our community. And so I want to congratulate you at KBLA. I want to congratulate Melody Span Cooper and Pierre Cooper for their willingness to put the reputations of their stations on the line to provide our communities with the highest level of truth telling possible. Now, that doesn't mean that we're always going to get it right.
But
we're going to be more right than we wrong.
Yeah.
If in fact we have the kind of courage that's necessary to do that.
And it doesn't mean, Jesse, that we have a monopoly on the truth. I say all the time, there is the truth and there is the way to the truth. And I believe we have to have the courage to say what we see. We have to be willing to call balls and strikes, but it doesn't mean that we have a monopoly on the truth. My grandmother put it this way. Big Mama said, baby, a broken clock is right twice a day. So I'm willing to allow, and I hope and pray that Donald Trump will be right every now and again, even as he advances his own agenda. But at the end of the day, we have to be willing again to say what we see, to have courage, conviction, commitment, born of a particular character in this moment right now that doesn't allow us that won't permit us to shy away from telling the truth that we do know, even as we are humble enough to admit that we don't always have a monopoly on the truth.
One of the things in terms of the structure of our program for our listeners is the first hour will always be an expert, a guest, a professor, someone who has authored a book, providing them with a forum. Like just a few weeks ago, I had Dr. Walter Fluker on, who was the foremost authority on Dr. Howard Thurman. I had Dr. Aubrey Hendricks on, who's the author of The Politics of Jesus. And then Dr. Bill Howard was on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we had Dr. Bob Franklin from Emory University, the author of Moral Leadership. And on Friday, we had, I believe, Dr. Barbara Arnwine and Reverend Dr. James Forbes. So in the first hour, we discuss something seriously substantive that appeals to the entire country and our community for the purposes of having a basis in solid research, scholarship, and truth. We may have political commentators in the first hour. We may have, as from David Axelrod all the way to John Nichols, we will be discussing and going back and forth with these issues. We're also fortunate enough to have people fighting to be on our program. And I don't mean it in a negative way. They really want to be on and be supportive. George Wilborn wants to come in as often as we'll have him on. And George Wallace has said, I want to ride with y'all. So we're going to have a lot of fun on KBLA and WVON on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. And I can't say enough about what that represents for all of us. With that said, Tavis, no one knows the ins and out times on KBLA better than you. Tavis, give us your thoughts on what you saw today in the president's speech.
Yeah.
In the remaining time.
I'll tee it up and we'll continue, as we say, when we come forward. I was on the air when he was giving the speech. I didn't get a chance to see every single word of it in its entirety, but I'm watching as I'm live on the air. I'm following the transcript. And he did as he did the first time around. It paints a very dark picture of this nation. And I'm the first to admit that America is not yet a democracy. I call it an experiment in democracy. Put another way, you could call America right now an oligarchy, a plutocracy with elections. But he painted this dark picture of America that I think is ominous in a variety of ways. The question is, even if you believe there are grim days ahead, as I do, what is the prescription to get us out of the situation that we are in? And sadly, I think that what Donald Trump then went on to suggest in his speech is not moving us, Jesse, in the right direction.
I hear this expansionist empire that Donald Trump has been advocating, and lest should we forget that the process of admitting states to the Union, one free and one slave, is the process that moved the nation from east to west. And now we're looking at, under Donald Trump, taking something back from the people of Canada, from Panama, and taking something back from the people of Canada, and even possibly occupying Greenland. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, we'll be with Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to the Jesse. Please bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down. Get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Febreze. So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The smarter way to clean your floors. It's time to make the swap. Swiffer Power Mop.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder, mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is Jesse Jackson Jr. on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The sky's the limit. That's D-Train. My very special guest is Tavis Smiley. And Tavis, I want to welcome you back to the show. Tavis, WVON does some extraordinary work here in Chicago in the community, but I also know that KBLA does some extraordinary work in Los Angeles. You guys have been dealing with a crazy wildfire. Tavis, share with us what KBLA is doing to help the community out there.
No, I appreciate it. For starters, last year, let me just say a quick word about Melody. As I mentioned, for those listening in LA right now, this is the first day of Jesse Jackson Jr.'s national syndication. He is now heard in LA on our station, KBLA Talk 1580, and WVON, the voice of the Negro in the Windy City. We are celebrating that. The first day always has a few technical issues, but by tomorrow, I promise you, we'll get all this smoothed out, and Jesse will sound as he always has, even though now he's in syndication. So I love Melody Span Cooper and what they've done with VON. As I said, one of my favorite stations in the country. Been on that station in that building many, many times, and so I honor the work that Melody has done and continues to do in that great city of Chicago. Here in LA, we're just 3.5 years in, but I believe if a black talk station is about anything, it ought to be about enlightening, encouraging, empowering those black folk who listen. It ought to be about using this platform to raise, Jesse, the civic IQ of those who will tune into us every day. And so last year, we grabbed this issue of climate justice by the horns and became the only black media outlet in the country that was really wrestling with this issue all year long. We had a 12-month campaign, raised almost $2.5 million. That's a lot of money for a small black business. Raised almost $2.5 million that we spent on this year-long climate justice campaign. That was a mix of a variety of things. Obviously, conversations on our station every day about everything under the climate umbrella. We had a massive outdoor campaign on billboards and buses, and everywhere in LA, you were seeing our messaging about climate. We had community events, free events every quarter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. An amazing campaign that lasted for 12 months, focusing on the issue of climate, because black people happen to be the disproportionate victims of climate injustice. You see what happened in Altadena here. Everybody's talking about the Palisades and Malibu and the Hollywood Hills, but Altadena is where our people, these historic black neighborhoods, were burnt out. And so it's very possible, Jesse, that these wildfires will leave in their wake even greater inequity. And so we were on this issue last year. The timing is propitious for us to continue it for year 2. This year, we're connecting climate and Black health, because if you live in these areas and you're subjected to these climate catastrophes, your health suffers as a result. And so in Altadena, not only will there be perhaps greater injustice behind these fires, but the toxins that we're breathing in right now with Black folk who already have pre-existing conditions, it's going to hit us harder than it does anybody and everybody else. And we'll continue our work on climate justice this year as our theme for the year, connecting that with healthful outcomes for Black people. But it's more for us than just talking every day. It's about serving our community in the ways that we can.
Tavis, I know you've worked very closely with Hakeem Jeffries' brother, who's been a regular contributor, the doctor out of, I believe, out of Ohio, who's also been on this show. Any concerns for the new speaker? He's in the minority. He's African American. He's got this interesting eclectic caucus of Blacks, 60 African Americans, I believe 30 or so Hispanics, pro-Israel supporters, pro-Gaza and Palestinian supporters. He's got white conservatives in the Democratic caucus, and he's trying to hold all of this together to really put the stoppers on Donald Trump in 2 years. It seems that Donald Trump's politics, however, could very well undermine the efforts of the first Black speaker. Your thoughts?
No, I think you're right. Let me just say, for starters, I have pushed Hakeem Jeffries to the very tippy top of my prayer list. He's always on my list, but now he's at the very top, because that's a whole lot to navigate with a caucus, as you just laid out quite brilliantly and eloquently, that is as diverse as the Democratic caucus is. Here's my greatest fear. My greatest fear is that the Democratic Party will continue to not get the messaging right. And I'm not here to tell Hakeem Jeffries what that messaging ought to be. I do believe that Hakeem Jeffries can be the right messenger. Sometimes, as you know, it's not the message, but the messenger. I don't think that Hakeem Jeffries has any difficulty expressing himself. And so he may be the right face for Democrats at this moment, say nothing of the Democratic National Committee process of electing the new titular head of the party. But for all intents and purposes, as the leader of the House, Hakeem Jeffries will likely be the face that we will see the most over the next couple of years, speaking on behalf of those persons who have a different point of view than Republicans in the House or Republicans in the country. And so I'm praying for him, as I said earlier. I don't need to give him notes on how to do his job, but at this moment, I am concerned that the resistance has not as yet met the moment. I said earlier that in Trump 1.0, we saw a serious defiance. We saw marches and protests, a lot of pushback. We didn't see any of that today. Today on this inauguration didn't see any real pushback. And I'm not suggesting that Hakeem Jeffries should have been protesting up and down Pennsylvania Avenue today, but I am concerned, Jesse, in the days to come that they've got to find their spine. They've got to find their messaging. They've got to be clear on where they're going to draw that line in the sand. If there is a Trump 2.0, and clearly there is, there must be a resistance 2.0. And at the moment, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really know what that resistance looks like when it comes to the Democratic Party. I don't know.
I think inside baseball, I've been there, right?
Yep.
I think inside baseball would be a fatal flaw, where you're just trying to get along with Marjorie Taylor Greene and you're trying to adjust to the majority and get a few things off of the table. I think the game has to be at Wrigley Field. It has to be at Sox Park. It has to be public. It has to be on WGN. It has to be watched by the people. We have to watch the umpires. We have to watch the pitcher. We have to watch how the balls and strikes are being called, so we can all agree that what we're looking at is what we're looking at. And no one can tell us that the rules of the game are different. If Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats on the inside think that inside baseball, things they want to get along with their colleagues and my distinguished friend from over here, and they don't recognize that most of what is taking place in Washington must be addressed outside of the ballpark and taken directly to the people, I think they will be making a tragic mistake. And believe me when I tell you, I was there. I was there when Newt Gingrich ran everything. I get it. Everybody wants to play inside ball. We want to be the distinguished gentleman from wherever we are, the distinguished gentlewomen from. The case in point, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. a fierce fighter when she first entered the Congress. And now she's trying to be the chairman of a committee. She's trying to organize. I understand how to move through Congress. I was vice chairman of the Foreign Operations Committee, of the Appropriations Committee. I get it, right? But I never lost my South Side. I never lost my feet in the ground wherever I traveled around the country on behalf of our community. I never did that. But I understood the inside ball. And my concern, Tavis, is that some of them are going to be playing more inside ball in the Trump era than they're going to be playing outside ball. And if they don't communicate that message, they will be lumped into a big group called Congress. Right. And I would make the case, this is true in state legislatures around the country, too. They're going to get lumped in a big legislative body and no one's going to hear anything from them.
Yep. Well, you were there for 17 years, so you know the adage, the mantra, indeed, of the Congressional Black Caucus: no no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. That's a nice slogan, and over the years I've thought more and more about that. But that slogan, taken the wrong way, can get you in a whole lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
And so we have to take that slogan with a grain of salt. And I hope that doesn't become the operating procedure necessarily, or process for speaker, or for the potential speaker, Mr. Jeffries. I think that the end game has to be, how do Democrats take back the House in 2 years? And I can tell you this, and you and I agree wholeheartedly on this. I don't profess to know the answer to all the questions. I do know that you're right, that going along to get along and playing the game by their rules and playing nice is not going to help you flip the House in 2 years. They have got to come up with a strategy, an agenda that they can sell to the American people to convince them why they need to have the gavel. But going along to get along, as my big mama would say, is not the answer to the prayer.
Having a spine.
Yeah.
And our listeners, in order for some of our elected officials to have a spine, have to have what you call a civic IQ, so that they can fortify their representatives to go back and be able to fight. It's almost like the fighter who wants to get out of the ring, and then the crowd or the corner, no, you're going to get back out there and you're going to keep fighting. You got another round. Throw a little water in his face, slap him upside the head, wash out his mouthpiece, put some smelling salt on it, to get on back out there and fight, Tavis. Now, we'll all be behind you. You're fighting Joe Frazier, you're fighting Ali, but that's all right. Ignore all of those jabs you taking upside your head, Tavis. Come on over here and let's throw some more water in your face and come on and get on back out there and fight. I think that's what we're looking at here. And if we don't give them and fortify them with a civic IQ that says this is what we are expecting, I'm concerned about our future and our direction. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The sky's the limit. Our special guest was Tavis Smiley. Thank you, Tavis.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.